So we finally got to see the re-released Let It Be movie after many years being not available for many people to see. Today we're going to ask the question whether it really added a lot, given that we've already seen Get Back. We're going to also take a look at each of the boys' performance in the movie, and we're going to dig into how much screen time each of them received. G'day, mate. Essential viewing or a waste of time? What do you think?
Oh, good afternoon, mate. Look, I'd probably meet you halfway in the middle there. I don't know if it's an essential watch, even if you are a massive Beatles fan like your good self there, mate. But I enjoyed it. It was interesting kind of watching the interview with Peter Jackson at the start, and he was giving a bit of a summary of the time and to what to look out for. But it's a bit different from Get Back, which I enjoyed a lot more than this particular upscaling version. What's your initial thoughts, mate? Because you've seen the original and the new version, whereas I'm just coming in a bit more fresh.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pleasantly surprising seeing it upscaled compared to all the bootleg versions that people have got, so we don't need to see them anymore. But overall, the movie, it felt like it's more or less a censored version of what actually happened, right? Like, there's a lot of things we found out in Get Back that we didn't quite see. We now knew about it, though, for example, George Harrison leaving the band. So it was interesting, I think, just from the perspective of how the Beatles, even though that they were breaking up really at the time, how they wanted to be perceived. I think that Michael Lindsay Hogg, I think he's had a bit of stick for the movie over a long period of time, and I think it was a little bit unfair, to be quite honest. I think he had one hand behind his back. He could have constructed a really good story out of what happened, but I think the problem is that you couldn't put the warts and all out there, and the good story that actually ended up happening when Peter Jackson got hold of the tapes, you couldn't really do. So what we've got is really just a collage, effectively, of songs leading up to the rooftop concert. Which
is an absolutely fantastic end to the film, and that's the first time I've seen that in such high quality, so that was really enjoyable.
Let's turn our attention to each of the four boys, and we're going to start with Ringo Starr. Now, Ringo Starr had probably the least amount of airtime. He definitely had the least amount of airtime. His body language, I think, was quite obvious that he really felt defeated.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, mate. I must admit, when I had a look at the sad disposition of Ringo's face in particular, it kind of reminded me of my puppy dog, and I might chuck a photo of my puppy dog up here and compare him and see if anyone in the comments can kind of agree with me there. But he really looked like he didn't want to be there, and that he knew that the band was on the ropes and going to break up, and he's probably thinking, what the hell am I going to do from here? And we're just going through the motions to a degree. But it's I actually was really taken back by both Ringo and George in terms of the film was able to create that emotive sense, really, because the band was coming to an end.
Let's get on to George. And now, George was somebody we knew when we saw the Get Back sessions that he left the band for 3 days, as I just mentioned. He had a similar vibe to him, but it was more of an annoying vibe, I think, from him. I feel as if when it was time for him to do his song, you had the issue with the microphone and everyone was laughing and joking, and that was his time, and it felt like he had to try and sell his songs through Ringo. You know, he went into the corner and showed Ringo the song, and that was sort of the impetus to performing his tune. I just don't think he got enough airtime to really develop his songs. Specifically, I Me Mine, the version that they played on the movie, I thought really showed you it had the potential to become something really, really interesting. It had a little bit of, I don't know if anyone's heard of Love. That's a band that we get into quite a bit here at Indie Miners. It reminded me of that, and that's where it was going. But what you heard on the record was quite plain compared to what it could have been.
I think you've summed that up pretty well. But again, it really comes back to, you did see the separation between the band members, and George had a lot more potential and a lot more things to give, but the major heavy lifting was coming, of course, from Paul McCartney and John Lennon. And speaking of which, give us a bit of a rundown on John Lennon in this.
I mean, he was interesting, right? Like, I think that, and this is similar to Get Back sessions, but he barely said a word.
Mate,
like there's not really anything.
He was high as a kite.
I'm pretty sure he was high as a kite. It was like, back in the day, they speak of him as being the leader of the band. Now he's the second banana, and you can see that he's distracted with Yoko. It's very, very clear, yet he still has some great tunes that he's able to bring to the table. But, interesting the conversation that Paul and John had right before the tunes that they played at the end, where they were, Paul was effectively bitching and moaning about George. John didn't say a word. John did not say a word that whole time. So I don't know if he was just acutely aware of the cameras being there and, he had his say in the back room without anyone hearing. I don't know, but I just feel as his head was somewhere else.
Yeah, and I think it'll be good in the comments if people know a little bit more than we do or have their interpretation to kind of shed some more light, because now we're going to talk about Paul McCartney. And Paul, he's got a fair crack of the time of this movie, mate, and that's the impression I got. It really was the Paul show for quite a while.
He had over 50% of screen time. So we've had a look at this, and compared to Ringo, who had less than 30%, he had quite a bit of time where the camera was focused either on him or with others. It was really Paul's show. He was the one. He was the captain. Some would argue that he was a bit of a control freak. Others would argue that, the others were effectively a rabble at that stage. Their head wasn't switched on. Someone needed to steer the ship. So I think he's going to be bashed either way, unfortunately, for this. But, I mean, there's nothing new that come out of this video compared to the Get Back sessions in terms of what we saw.
No, not at all. And I definitely agree with that in terms of it does come across that Paul is quite controlling. But to be fair, the other side of the coin is it did seem that the other band members were kind of clocking off to a degree. And, Paul is known for his work ethic. I mean, the guy still plays live to our concerts at 80 years of age. So I don't know. He's pretty professional. So I'm kind of on two sides of it. So I think the film allowed that to be kind of portrayed quite well, both the emotive states of all the band members as well as just the situation of the band at that particular time, which is easy to forget that was just, as the band was kind of breaking up, which was a sad time for the Beatles and for music across the world, mate.
So let us know what you think. Are you surprised about the amount of time that each person got in terms of screen time? So that is our take on the restored Let It Be film.